This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV.com, and today as my special guest I have former WWE Women's Champion, former Universal Wrestling Federation Women's Champion, Ladies Major League Wrestling Champion, and Cauliflower Alley Club Award winner, the sister of Jake Roberts and Sam Houston, half sister, I believe. None other than Rockin Robin, looking as lovely as ever. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, doing well. Thank you. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. The fans have been asking me to interview you for a long time now, so I'm glad
Really?
I was able to
Oh,
track you down. Yeah, I've interviewed both of your brothers.
oh, God bless. Uh, uh, actually, I'll just clarify that Sam is my biological brother. So
Okay.
he's a full brother, and then I have Jake's a half brother, and then another half brother who was recently in the Dark Side of the Ring episode, and that was Richard. So the two half brothers there.
That was quite an episode. Did it take much convincing to get you involved in that? Because that's bringing up a lot of memories you probably didn't exactly want to talk about.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's funny you asked that. Because I did tell him no actually a couple of times. um, so when I was first asked, it just I didn't want to come off as just doing a hit job on the family, and I've said that over and over. But once I saw the a couple of other episodes of Dark Side, and just saw how respectful they were and how they treated their subjects, whoever it was, then I thought, and if it could possibly help somebody that could be in that situation at the, then yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. So I think once everybody was on board, um, that I think it turned out pretty well. I mean, I was really happy with the episode.
What was your childhood like? I know that focused on a lot of the negative, but could you tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up in a wrestling family?
Yeah, I guess we weren't your average, we weren't your normal, family on the block. Um, Whereas, say other kids would go visit grandma or go away for the weekend to the beach or what have you. We would spend our time traveling the roads with dad and going to wrestling matches, and it was a different life for sure. Um, but it was, I guess, different is the best word. I mean, it was fun. I probably wouldn't trade it uh, just for growing up in that atmosphere. Um, but definitely not normal, which is okay too.
I know that Jake's always said that your father kind of kayfabed him and it was a little bit traumatizing growing up. Did he kayfabe you as well? I imagine he would have.
Oh yeah, all of us. Yeah, we never we we weren't really smartened up until, I mean, until we were grown. Um, and it it, uh, it can, just like he said in the piece, it can be really devastating. You see your father in the ring, and blood gushing, and that's back in the day when um, you were going to see that kind of stuff. And um, there's some old pictures. We don't have a lot of pictures, but there's some old pictures, and usually in the pictures when we're really little and we're watching a match, they're at a live match. It's usually, we're sitting there crying, and just not knowing what was going to happen. But yeah, he would always make it through. And of course, my mother did the best she could to try to calm us down and let us know that everything was going to be okay, and it was. Uh, but and I'm not really sure why, or why he did that and why he kept that going for so long. It seems a bit cruel. I mean, there's protecting the business, and then there's um, not hurting your family. So
Was he
more
usually a
close.
baby face or a heel?
Usually a baby face.
Okay.
Hmm.
How did the kids in school treat you knowing that your father was a wrestler?
Uh, for me, I really didn't talk about it that much with friends. Now, Sam, on the other hand, he would talk about it, and it's kids. When kids find out they can get a rise out of you, they're gonna poke and pick at you even more. So poor Sam. I mean, he would. They'd come after him and just talk about, oh, what your father does is fake, your wrestling's fake, your whole family's fake, and he would wind up getting in fights. And I on the other hand, I would just turn around and tell him, well, the two cars in the garage aren't fake and the swimming pool's not fake, and so they'd kind of leave me alone about it. Um, it, it was it was it was kind of, I guess, both ends of the spectrum. Um, so wasn't that hard to handle, really.
You mentioned the two cars in the garage and the swimming pool. Would the money have been pretty good in those days for him? I know he was a main eventer.
Yeah, it for him. Yeah, yeah, it would have been, uh, and it's probably a lot of cash, I would think, which is a good thing. But I think the problem back then too, though, is that the tendency to save money just wasn't there. Um, you could make a lot of money, blow a lot of money. You're just constantly up and down the roads, and so I think it was a lot harder to hang on to for whatever reason. But as far as us as kids, we never went without. Um, we had I guess, a nice middle class ish lifestyle. Um, so I can't complain about that. We, like I said, didn't go without. So that was nice.
I imagine you moved around a lot in those days.
Oh yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Uh, Something like when I was going into, say, first grade, I think. Prior to that, we had moved in about 3 years' time. We had moved 5 or 6 times, which is a lot. I mean, I think about it now; it's just crazy. But that's what you did. It was kind of like, the circus. You pulled down your tent and you went on to the next town and threw it back up and started the show again.
Was there any wrestlers when you were growing up that were
Uh,
particularly nice to you?
what's that? I'm sorry.
Was there any wrestlers when you were growing up that were particularly nice to you?
Well, they kind of all were, since because our father was, most of the time he was the booker, and a main event. So um, they most of the guys were, um, either over at the house pretty often, or um, let me just think. That's a good question. I'm just trying to think back then who we were around. Probably a good bit. Oh, Skandar Akbar, if you remember him. Um, we used to call him Uncle Aki, and and of course my dad's partner many years ago as one of the Kentuckians. That was Luke Brown, and so he was close as well. Nelson Royal, who trained me, very close. And yeah, probably as we talk, more will come. But In fact, Andre the Giant used to come in quite often, and it was just kind of cool seeing those two together because you've got Andre, and then you got Andre, and then my dad on his own was 7 foot tall, 350 pounds, big guy, and then Andre's Andre. So, but it was funny to look at them like you've got me and mini me. My dad being the mini me, which was unusual.
Did he kind of take care of you as you were getting into the business, knowing you from a young girl, Andre?
Who, Andre?
Yeah.
No, not well. Yes and no. Kind of a wild story about that was on my first trip to Europe. Um, Andre was on the trip. He was on the tour, and I was going over there for the first time. And so Andre had told me, I guess I had won the title. So Andre says, "Well, yeah, Robin, you're too young. I mean, you're too skinny to be champion." So his idea, he thought it'd be best to put about 30 pounds on me. So he says, "That's what we're going to do. And what I want you to do is I want you to, for every meal, I want you to come sit by me. Um, we'll meet for every meal, and we're going to make sure that we get you beefed up on this trip." So I mean, I wasn't real thrilled about it, but as Andre, you got to do whatever Andre says. So the very first night we're there, we were at a restaurant. We were in Italy and at a restaurant, and we walked in, and they had, how you have a salad bar, and you've got all the we call them fixins, for the salads. They had a seafood bar, and I'm talking like exotic, like the octopus and just things I didn't even recognize. And I'm from Louisiana, and we eat just about anything. Uh, so they had all of this stuff just hanging out, and I was like, oh man, no way. If he heads for that salad bar, I'm done. There's just no way. But he actually didn't do that, but he did order. He ordered some fish, and the first thing he did, they brought the fish. They set it down. It was the whole thing. And I mean, I like my fish fried, honestly. But there was this whole big. It looked like it was just like they just caught it, threw it on the plate. But the first thing he did was just pop out the eyeball and eat it. And I don't know. I thought I was going to lose it right there, but I said, "Oh, ho, ho, ho!" There was no way I could even sit for another meal. So I took off. I actually kind of excused myself, went back to the hotel, and God bless him. I mean, he was so angry, and he wouldn't talk to me for the rest of the trip. So we finally made peace somewhere down the road. But yeah, it's not fun having Andre upset with you. But I'm sorry, I just can't eat eyeballs. Just can't do it.
Yeah, I've heard once you get on his bad side, it can take some time to make up with him.
Oh yeah, yeah, because you can't outdrink him. You can't even forget outdrink him. You can't even last. You can't even hang with him. Um, yeah, I mean, he was so his. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that everybody's heard, what a big heart the man had. I mean, no pun intended. Just he's a phenomenal person, but he would get his feelings hurt pretty easily, and it would you knew it if you pissed him off or you hurt his feelings, you definitely knew. Um, what you gonna do? Don't piss off a giant.
You mentioned that your father was a booker a lot of the time. He was always backstage, it seemed, in various companies right up until WCW. what was it about him? Did he just have a really good mind for the business that he always had those agent and booking positions in the various companies?
Yeah, I think so. He was I think phenomenal in the storytelling. So, it's the psychology, and that's what makes it work. And I mean, unfortunately, I think that's what's been forgotten. Um, in the more recent years, is the psychology of it all. And but he knew how to put a story together. He knew how to build the angles. Um, he knew how to, who worked well with who, and he paid attention to that. And you've probably heard also that people credit Jake with having such a good mind for the business and his psychology, and I do. I think he gets some of that. Comes honestly, and uh, they just you know it's it's the manipulation that you do, or you try to, with the crowd, that that makes it interesting. I mean, you've got to, if you're going to be a baby face, you've got 5 or 10 minutes to get in there and have those people just love you as much as um, you can get them to love you, or like you. Um, and the same with the heel. They've got to really, really hate you or want to see you get destroyed. Because if not, nobody cares. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter who goes over. It doesn't matter what happens. But I mean, until you get the crowd behind you, that's you're kind of wasting time. And so they really did know how to do that back then. I mean, I hear that all the time. People, you know, fans all the time just love going back to the older, like Mid South days and the older era. And I think, I mean, that's exactly why they
Well,
knew
they
how to
were
tell.
paid on houses back then too. I'm sure that helped. They had to do that because if they didn't draw the big houses, they wouldn't get paid.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Now they
yeah,
have the guaranteed contracts and these big TV deals, and they also don't have to go back to the same towns every week, which I'm sure also makes you be a little bit more creative as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, there was just something, I think back then you could take an angle and run the same angle for what, a year, or longer, because you didn't have the TV. You didn't So you're going from town to town, and that's what made, I think that's what made it work, um, in the old days. And but now with all the exposure, I guess it is pretty tough to have to try to come up with new stuff weekly. But again, I think there's still something missing with the. Just my opinion, for what it's worth, is that there's still something missing with the connection, and and getting people to um, really care about who they're watching, what they're watching. Instead of uh, I mean, you just see these unbelievable moves, unbelievable, um, spots off the top rope, off the rafters, for God's sakes, and some of them. It's incredible, but it means nothing unless you are invested with those people. Makes sense.
Yes, for sure. As far as your brothers growing up with the three brothers, which one were you the closest to?
Growing up, it was Sam or Mike. Um, we were only a year difference in age, and so up until actually our parents got divorced. So we grew up together, and he was a great big brother. Um, and and then once the kind of the household split, he actually went and lived with our father and me with my mother, and kind of went our separate ways. But yeah, it had to be Mike. But and then in as adults, I guess I would say that I'm in pretty good contact, constant contact with Richard. Richard and I are pretty close, and have been for the last 20 or so years, which they didn't really go into on the dark side episode, but it it's good to have that connection, especially with Richard, because we didn't see a lot of him growing up.
Sam's been pretty open about his issues and his time in jail and everything. Were you staying in contact with him at all through all of that, or at that point, was he just too lost to really stay in touch with too much?
He just we just weren't around each other, and I guess as it while it was going on, I didn't really know that it was that heavy, like the drinking and all. It really wasn't until um, after he and I both were well out of wrestling that that I started to see um, just how bad the how bad the drinking was, and the problems it was causing. But yeah, he was still it's and again I keep referring back to the dark side episode, but it it kind of did tell pretty well the story of why we know so little about each other. Really, is that we were raised at a distance. We were kept at a distance from each other, so that I think mainly so that no two would really talk about a whole lot, and so you never really knew what was going on with the other person, and that was intentional on our father's part.
What did you think about the dark side of the ring? Sorry, not dark side of the ring, beyond the mat, how they portrayed your father and Jake. I know Jake wasn't happy with the way that the producers edited that movie.
Um, See, I'm gonna have to now. I admit I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing. I saw some bits and pieces, but I don't think I've ever sat and watched the from beginning to end. So uh, I'm not really sure. I heard it wasn't real flattering on the part of Grizz. So I don't know. Not a lot I could say about that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it was one of Jake's low points at that time when they were recording too. So I'm happy that AEW seems to be taking care of him right now. I heard he recently had an ankle surgery or something, and he's getting back on his feet now. So that's are
Mhm.
you happy with all the success Jake has had in recent years since overcoming his addictions?
Sure, sure. I'd be happy for anybody that um, that can manage to, come pull out of it, pull it together. It's a hard thing to do, and so yeah, absolutely. Uh, I think everybody deserves some happiness and success without all that. And he's right. Uh, I think something that he mentioned in the episode too, that it is it's tough because you if especially with if you're in a spotlight, no matter what kind of spotlight it is, that people just, make things available to you, more so than, if you weren't. So it's, I'm not saying pushed on you, but it's certainly, things come a little bit easier. And so it's pretty easy to go down that rabbit hole.
Particularly in the 80s when the partying was really part of the wrestler's lifestyle.
What about it?
Like
Sorry.
back in the 80s, the partying
Yeah.
was more a part of the wrestler's lifestyle than it is
Oh
today.
God, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Um, Again, it was just easy to get your draw and then go blow all your money, and um, you didn't. So the one thing about drugs, alcohol, all that stuff, it makes you forget about your responsibility for tomorrow. So you don't even think of those terms of, oh, maybe I should put something aside, or maybe I don't know, there's no holding back. So yeah, the 80s was all about just going for it. Who could outdo whom?
Yeah, I noticed you smile about that, so it couldn't have been all bad.
No, no, yeah, it's all of a sudden, there's like this like little movie starts going off in your head, just of some of the places, some of the people, some of the places, some of the things that you do. But I don't know. Doesn't it seem like though the 80s was just, for everybody, was just outrageous?
Yes, it
I mean,
definitely
come on.
does.
Yeah, yeah.
You were definitely one of the better looking female wrestlers of that time. There were a lot of them were more like Moolah-esque. Did you have like a lot of male fans that would be trying to ask you out and so forth on a regular basis?
uh Actually, no, it wasn't. We were we weren't really that close to the public, I guess. Um, and I mean, if you're talking about, say, at live shows and that sort of thing, um, you nobody really got close enough to you to do that. And then two, uh, whereas I could walk through an airport, I could go anywhere, and very rarely got recognized. Whereas one of the guys, just all they have to do is stand up, and so like I said, not being recognized, not um, you don't get really chased after. So no, it wasn't a problem. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it was just not an issue.
Were you married during your wrestling career?
God, I think you're the first one that's ever asked that. Um, I was married once shortly after, um, and for about a minute, um, actually for about a year. But and we're still friends to this day. But yeah, it was kind of one and done. Sure was.
Yeah, you're not like Ric Flair getting married 5 times.
No, no.
And
Only Rick can do that. Only Rick can do that and still be happy about it.
yeah, and he claims he's had sex with 10,000 women, so was he even faithful a day to these women?
Yeah, who know? I don't know. I don't know. That's 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 he's a hero in so many, and a hero and legend, and to so many people. So I guess you all have to kind of think of uh, whatever you want to think about the truth of the truth and the legend of Ric Flair.
Yeah, the
Things
recent
like
Dark
that.
Side of the Ring wasn't very kind to him.
Mm. I hadn't seen that one yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you ever out partying when he was at the bars? You always hear the stories that he would buy everybody drinks.
Yeah. Once or twice I think I was, but I we didn't really cross paths that much because I was never in the Carolinas. I was never in NWA, and so yeah, I didn't see him a whole lot. But I do go back, do remember him from when I was a kid. Uh, surely my dad knew him, and so we go way back. You just always gotta, you always have to. He's one of those people you always have to, smile or get a little laugh, when you think about him.
Now, I've heard Jake say the reason he got into the wrestling business was because he wanted to impress your father and be better than your father and more successful than him at wrestling, which he actually accomplished. What was your goals getting into the wrestling business, and what made you choose to get into it?
Um, I guess mine was really different. I first of all, it was the last thing anybody thought I would ever do. Friends of mine growing up, even my mother, they literally blew them away when I said that I wanted to. I thought I wanted to uh, go into the business, and and I knew though if I did, I wanted to do it kind of my way. I didn't want to really go. I didn't want to go the Moolah route. Um, but I, th- it was I think on a Saturday morning one day that I saw I flip on the TV and some cartoons were on, and there was Jake. There was the wrestling cartoon, and there's a cartoon of Jake, and I thought, man, this has gotten. I mean, if they're making cartoons now, this is pretty big. Because up until then, I hadn't really followed it. And once I saw that, though, it got me thinking. And sometimes that even though that's not the thing that you intended to do or started out to do, for me, obviously, there was I had an opportunity, whereas a lot of other people maybe wouldn't. Meaning, you know, um, everyone in the family. I had some, doors open for me that. So it's kind of, I think in my mind, it was kind of maybe crazy to pass up the opportunity just to see if I could do something with it, and that's really why.
And I understand you trained with Baby Doll, who I've interviewed quite a few times. She ended up marrying your brother, Sam Houston. How was it training with her, and how is your relationship with her over the years?
We actually we talk a good bit, and we have a good relationship, and we didn't necessarily train together. There were a couple of times that her and Sam kind of stopped in at Nelson's place, and we'd work out a little bit in the ring for an hour or so. But like I say, maybe once or twice. But the yeah, the relationship is just great. Um, as I said, we still talk, and able to message every now and then. And yeah, I think a lot of Nicola. She's a great person.
I understand that you guys were looked at by the WWE at the same time. How was that experience? I think it was only after you were wrestling about a year or so you received that opportunity.
Yeah, no, you know what? I've heard that before, but that's not actually. I don't know where that story came from, but that's not actually true. I don't
It's
know.
on your Wikipedia, so I'm glad we're setting
Oh,
the record straight here.
okay. Uh, yeah, if they were if they were looking at us both, I had no idea. All I know is that once I finished training with Nelson, then I went to a couple of the, and with the help of our father, I went to a couple of the TV tapings, and it just so happened that one of the TV tapings, they needed a dark match, and so somebody, I guess, sent word to somebody and let them know that I had my gear, everything there. So they uh, they put me in a dark match with Sherry Martel, and then that's kind of from then on. That's kind of how I got in. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that started, but to my knowledge, that wasn't a thing.
Well, now we've set the record straight, so that's good. As far as Sherry Martel, I believe you won the women's title from her, and she's, of course, in the WWE Hall of Fame, huge legend. Any memories of her you could share with us?
Oh, uh, probably a few. Probably a few I could, but I shouldn't. It's Sherry was just because she was really one of a kind. She really was. Um, she, I think, more so than anybody, um, she was extremely unpredictable. You never knew what she was going to do, which was frightening and exciting. But and I think made her a lot of fun to watch. Um, I will say this: she actually is the one that introduced me to my ex husband. So when my time comes, the first thing I'm going to do when I see her is just smack her. So
Was there jealousy in the back or anything? I know from being a wrestler that there's always politics and stuff, and she had held that title for a long time. I think something like 15 or 16 months before you took it. Were you
hmm
guys on friendly terms, or did you get the feeling that maybe she didn't want to give up her spot?
no, we were on very friendly terms, and in fact, this she had dropped the title in Paris, France, and it just so happened my mother could be there, and my mother told me later on that night after we had finished that she said she thought it was the sweetest thing that because Sherry turned to her and said that it was she just said it was your daughter's time to fly, and I thought that was very very nice. But I think what we kind of had a little bit of a rough start, Sherry and I, and but I think that was at the direction of Mula actually, because Mula to Mula, I came in since I didn't go through her. I came in and took a spot that another one of her girls could have, and so she didn't necessarily like that. So Sherry told me much later that Mula had kind of put word out to kind of take me out of there. Um, so the first few nights, especially, were pretty rough with Sherry, and we worked really stiff anyway. But it was particularly rough. Then after a few nights, you get in there. Sometimes you just have to you literally have to fight back and maybe earn a little bit of respect. And then once you do, and once we did, and she realized that I really wanted to. Um, get in there and again like the old days, tell a story, try to get the crowd involved and really work. um, then I think she was, she was a-okay with it. We had a great time.
I know you wrestled with Wendy Richter at various periods. I don't think ever in WWE though. What did you think about that whole situation with Moolah and Wendy Richter, where allegedly a screw job took place?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's probably not a real big surprise to anybody. And that was a little bit before me. So, I don't know a great deal about it. Just the same as everybody else has heard. I mean, I've talked to Wendy a little bit, maybe once or twice about it, and there's a great deal of bitterness, which I guess I would be too. And but that I think it was kind of typical maybe Moolah stuff. Um, there's not a whole lot else to um, elaborate on that.
Would you say you were able to overcome that heat from Moolah just because your brother had a really good position with the company and they probably wanted to keep him happy too?
No, I think that Moolah finally um, uh, called the dogs off, basically. That because I wound up having a match with her, and not for WWE, not for WWF, but I don't even I can't remember where we were, but we wound up having a long match, and I think at that point is and like I said, sometimes you have to. It's about getting in there and kind of earning respect, really in the ring, and I think once we had that match, it seemed like everything kind of changed. Um, she knew that I was in there to work, not just trying to come in and just take things from anyone. You certainly can't do that anyway. Um, you've got to work and earn those spots, no matter who you are.
There's a fan on here that just tipped me $20 and wanted me to ask you if you could be more specific about being in the ring with Sherry. Was she stiff? Like, what was it actually like to be in a match with her?
Extremely stiff. Um, and we both were. We both, I think, like to work pretty snug, and so I mean, we would both. If I was on the road, or anytime I was on the road and went home after 20, 25 days, I mean, I was black and blue from head to toe, and so was she. Um, and even most of the guys back then would have told you that they didn't want to work with us, either one of us. That was for sure. Um, so, but even though we were extremely stiff, um, we we still took good care, I think, of each other. There weren't any big accidents. There weren't any big injuries. Um, and most of the time, if you do have one, you wind up doing it to yourself anyway. But yeah, it was good.
There's been many people watching that want me to ask you about Elizabeth and what you witnessed as far as her behind the scenes. There's all these rumors that Macho Man perhaps didn't treat her that well as a woman backstage with them. How did you view everything with those two?
Um, they were very private. So uh, occasionally, Liz would share the dressing room with us when she could, and I think she enjoyed that. But for the most part, they were kind of in their own little world, and so it's kind of you knew the boundaries. Like everybody knew the boundaries when it came to Liz and Randy, and uh, I mean you couldn't meet nicer, greater people. Um, but they were a little bit more closed off, I guess, than uh, than most guys and girls.
Where did you get the name Rockin' Robin?
It just it was like, well, what else goes with Robin? That's that literally is how it came up. So we wanted my first match. I think someone came out and said, "Well, you know, what are we going to announce you as?" And just hadn't been something at that time. Hadn't been something I really thought about. It was the the again. I think one of the differences from back then is it was at that time. I mean, character building is so important now, and in a lot of cases, there you have this entire character and background, everything before you even go out into the ring. And it was just it was the other way around back then. So um, there was just no thought whatsoever, just to be honest, put into to that name.
Now, you sang America the Beautiful at, I believe,
Uh,
WrestleMania 5. What was that all about? Why didn't they put you in a match and they gave you that role instead?
right. Why didn't they? Uh, so yeah. So let's talk about one of the most embarrassing things ever. Um, it. I don't even know how it all came about. I don't know whose idea it was, and you know, and I know us talking, and I've said like I don't know how many times, but you really don't. You really don't know. Um, it, when we were working in the WWF, um, you would get a call, you would get an agent would come in and say, "Here's what you're doing," and give you no rhyme or reason whatsoever. Um, but I just remember it was Jake that called me up. I think it was Jake that called me up one morning and said that they want you to sing "America the Beautiful" at WrestleMania. And I mean, my first thought was, I mean, why? I hadn't, I didn't understand. The only thing I could think of was that there were nights that after we would wrestle, and especially if they had like a cool bar at the hotel, we would go down to the bar, have some drinks, and I mean, it wasn't unusual that I'd get up and sing with the band, but that's like after a couple of drinks, that's um, you kind of bluesy, blues songs, and um, that's the only way. That's the only thing I could think of that would have given anybody say that idea. And the other question is like, why would you say yes? So obviously that was the wrong answer. Um, but one of my favorite lines in a movie is from Funny Girl. That's an old movie, but where they're asking Fanny Bryce, "Can you roller skate?" I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, but it's so great. And she's like, "Can I roller skate?" And then, of course, she goes on to tear up the entire stage and set and all. And he comes back and says, "Well, I thought I thought you could roller skate." And she said, "Well, I didn't know I couldn't." So I guess that's my excuse. I didn't know I wouldn't be able to pull it off. But
Now, I imagine your pay would have been pretty good for that, though, being a WrestleMania pay-per-view in front of a sold-out crowd.
it wasn't enough to cover the embarrassment. So no, no, it wasn't. It, no, if I could go back, I would pay them uh, to go back and just reverse the whole thing.
What
Um,
would have been your highest paid match, anyways, without saying the amount? Is there one that stands out to you that you really got a great payday?
uh, Yeah, I guess it would be. It would have been in Paris, France. But believe it or not, it wasn't that great. It just again, you never knew you never knew if there was a difference in your pay. You didn't know why. There weren't any balance sheets. There weren't any breakdowns of the. You didn't know where it was coming from. It's like, well, we'll just give you. You can take a $200 draw tonight, and I don't know, 500 tomorrow night, and then you would get a portion of a check later on. Um, I guess a month later, um, and like I said, there was just not a. There's no real way to figure it out.
Now
I know we
you,
weren't making the big bucks. Put it that way.
yeah, the males always made more. They still
Yeah.
do.
Oh yeah. Sure.
What made you leave WWE? Was that your choice because you left as still as champion? Did they just kind of give up on their women's division, or did you just not want to be part of the roster anymore?
No. I mean, it was their decision. They had just called me in and probably several other people and said that they weren't going to renew the contract and didn't again no didn't give a reason. They just said, thank you for your hard work, and that was it. And so we could probably I could probably come up with a 4 or 5 different things, but I just don't know. There weren't a lot of girls at the time, and I don't know if it was just a uh, a problem with developing more women for that. But I mean, even back then they didn't even call it a division, so it was just we were we were looked at more as a novelty match than anything else. And so just like in the old days, it was sometimes you had a girls match and sometimes you didn't. And so I think it wasn't until what if good few years later that they really started to get behind having an actual division for women. It was great.
Yeah, and even then it didn't last that long, and then finally it came back again to stay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever have a WCW offer or NWA or anything like that? Because if I was running a competitive company and you're the undefeated women's champion, I would certainly be wanting to hire you in theory.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Uh, that's what I'm talking about. No, I actually when when they didn't renew the contract, I think that was the point I made the decision too that I had really kind of gone as far as I could go or wanted to go, and I knew I think early on, even before I went into wrestling, I knew that that's not what I would do for the rest of my life. I just you know as uh, or the way it was then again that it I mean you're just very limited as to um, how far you could go. There was no merchandise back then, um, and it just seemed like a really rough, probably a really rough road to try to make that last. Till throughout your entire life. But so I kind of knew from the beginning. So to me, that was a good point just to go ahead and walk away and figure out what else I was going to do.
Now, you also worked with Luna Vachon quite extensively. She has a dark side of the ring coming up. Any memories of her you could share with us?
Yeah, Luna and I went to Japan. I think it was her first tour and my first tour over there. So we got over there. It was the first time I had met Luna too. I was on the flight over, and so uh, I uh, I didn't get the full Luna until we got over there. Um, and what I mean by that is that, so I think it was the first or second night we were there. She wanted to go out into the streets and with the big dog collar on, um, and chains and all of this. And so I so here we are in Tokyo, and I've got this woman on a chain, like a dog, and she's walking her down the street, and she's barking and growling and making noise. And I mean, I think about it now, how I mean that's pretty wild. And then we stopped in front of a McDonald's over there. Got her a couple of hamburgers, just kind of threw them at her, and uh, that was our first or second night in Tokyo. So we kind of went in with a splash. Um, it's nuts, but she loved it, and Luna. Uh, Luna, I think, loved living the gimmick as well. And I mean, God bless her. She was a trip. Loved her to death.
Were you surprised that she passed away so young, or could you see her kind of going down that path?
Uh, I didn't see her going down because we were out of touch for a long time. Uh, but so yeah, I was surprised. Surprised, sad, like everyone else.
You
Yeah.
also were the champion, as I mentioned at the start of this, for Herb Abrams' UWF, which seemed to have been a pretty crazy company to work for. How did you get involved with that guy, and what was that experience like?
Uh, I got a call that they were doing this new promotion, UWF. I didn't know anything about Herb Abrams. Didn't know who he was. Um, so they said, we want you to come in, and here's what we're doing. And I said, great, sounds good. And it was, I think, it was just the one night um, that we went there. And to this day, I don't think I actually ever met her. Um, we were again just in the dressing room, and someone comes to the back and says, "Well, here's what you're going to do. We need about 10 minutes." And uh, Robin's going over, and that was it. So we were just in and out, and then lo and behold, that was done. It didn't go much further than that.
Were you shocked to see that he had rented that huge arena and there was only about 600 fans in there with all those stars on the card at that time?
Yeah, well, I don't think that was the same. That was not the same show that that I did.
Okay.
Um, I don't believe. I
You
think it
were
was two
on one of
different.
the pay-per-views, though, I think. You
Uh-huh.
were Beach Brawl. You were
Yeah,
on Beach Brawl in Florida, I think.
yeah, that sounds right.
There's some
Mhm.
fans on here that want to know if you had any interactions with the Ultimate Warrior behind the scenes.
Oh, uh, I didn't. I didn't have that many. We rode together probably a couple of times, but he and Sam were pretty good friends. Uh, when Warrior started, um, and so before he just blew up into uh, the Ultimate Warrior, um, they used to hang out a good bit. Um, and then once the Warrior took over, um, I don't think they, they palled around too much anymore.
Did Hulk Hogan treat you well when you would see him
Oh yeah,
behind the scenes?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a super guy, super person. Um, very very respectful. Sherry and I actually were stranded one time, I think in Canada, and we were at a little private airport, and we were trying to make two shows. We just come off of one, and we had a double, so trying to get to the other one, and somehow our flight or arrangements were screwed up. So Terry said, "Oh, come on, girls, you can hop in with me." So we got on his plane, and took a ride, and he flew us into the next shot. And in fact, I remember on the flight he was talking about his new movie coming out, or the movie he had written. I think he wrote it, right? Was the No Holds Barred?
Yeah, I think him and Vince kind of co-wrote it.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the first I ever heard of it. It was there on his plane. It was pretty cool.
And I guess you liked wrestling on his cards because your payoff would have been bigger if he was the main event.
Yeah, not necessarily. No, mm-mm, no. Like I said, I had we had no idea how the money was cut up, how what went into figure, and how much we made. It didn't seem there was no significant difference from one to another. Big card, little card.
I know now they have specific agents that work with the female wrestlers matches. I know Tyson Kidd is one of them, and it used to be Finley. When you were in WWE, I know it was a lot less produced, but was there a specific agent that dealt with the women's matches?
Uh, no. It just whoever happened to be assigned on that show. So, I mean, I think we all dealt with all of them.
Who was your favorite opponent?
Uh, I'd probably I'd have to say. I mean, I guess each in their own right. I think I love different things about different ones, but I mean, Sherry certainly was great to work with, and Judy Martin, of course, Lilani, um, and yeah, I mean, like I said, there weren't a whole lot back then, but we made our rounds.
Is there any wrestlers today that you watch? Any females that are in WWE or AEW that you think are good?
Uh, I think that I mean, to be there at that point, to be in WWE, or even on a lot of the others now, AEW, wherever. I think you have to be really good. I think just as an athlete, I mean, it's amazing what they do, and I guess I don't follow it enough now. It's kind of a shame to say, but I don't follow it enough to you know I guess talk a great deal about it. But I think like Charlotte Flair does a great job at holding the whole thing together. Um,
And you know who else holds the whole thing together?
Hey, congratulations. You finally have a wrestler with class on your show.
Oh, you
She's
know
not
what?
drunk. She's not drugged up. She doesn't have developmental disabilities.
You know
Great
what?
job.
I wish I could say we had a host with class, but we don't. That's why the captain's here to grace you with a little bit of that, like Robin did for the last hour. Captain out, Robin out. Good night, Hannibal.